Hello, it's Simon Marshall here from TBD Marketing. This week, I got to interview Ben White from Crafty Counsel. Ben, for those of you who don't know him, has set up this incredible network that is for general counsel. I was lucky enough to go to their marquee event earlier on in the year called Crafty Fest, where 800 plus general counsel get together in central London and talk all things about being a GC, ethics, the law, working with private practice, working with each other, a sense of community as well. What Ben's created is exceptional. I think others have tried to do something similar as well. And there are other options available out there as well. Just in my experience, he has created something that's quite zeitgeisty. And as is the case with really genuinely impressive founders, he has found ways to keep reinventing Crafty as it's gone to allow it to keep evolving, to keep serving the community that he's created. So, listen, thank you for your ears as always for this week's edition. I'd love it if you could spend the 40 minutes or so it's going to take to listen to what Ben's got to say. I think it's incredibly important. Doesn't matter if you're a general counsel, if you're an in-house lawyer, if you're aspiring to be one of those things, but actually, if you work in private practice and you want to get to know what's on the mind of those people. Ben himself is a private practice lawyer originally. Then he went into working into as a fashion GC, and he's had options as well to be in private equity kind of VC world as well. We have good fun in the session. He is incredibly generous as a speaker. If you get the opportunity to hear him speak at some point as well, I'd really encourage you to do so. He's desperately impressive. And as I say, he's got this hugely loyal community, and created something very special with Crafty. If you're in continental Europe and you're in any way able to get to the event that he mentions in Amsterdam, I'd encourage you to apply and go and do that in short order. They're creating something cool over in that edition of Crafty. And I think it's lovely to be in on the ground floor with these things as well, find out what's going on, help shape the debate and the topics and what's going to be discussed. It's a bit different to being in the mothership, to be honest, if you're in there early as well. Yeah, listen, as always, I'll never take the time that you spend listening to the work that we do for granted. So I really appreciate you stopping by. Thank you. And I hope you enjoy today's edition as much as I ended up enjoying recording it. And you're having this kind of successful career in private practice. What was it that prompted you to go into in-house? And then what was it that prompted you to go from there into kind of what you're doing today?
When I was going back to private practice. So I was at Clifford Chance. I liked most of the things about it. So lots and lots of positives. But I had always had this lurking feeling that I thought at some point I wanted to do something else. And in some ways, it was a really easy, not an easy path, but the path of least resistance in a way would be to just sort of keep carrying on. And I felt that a little bit. So at the point I left, I was 4.5 years qualified. And I think I've probably for a couple of years been thinking I might want to end up somewhere else and hadn't proactively taken the effort to go and figure out what that thing was. So there's a little bit of a sort of existential feeling there and wanting to create something. And I thought I might not have the opportunity if I stayed on that particular track, despite its attractions. So that was the move behind in-house. And then in-house to Crafty Counsel. Well, so after Clifford Chance, I went to work for a scale-up called Global Fashion Group. It's still around. It's listed now, listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And it's a holding company for a bunch of fast fashion e-commerce businesses. So it's sort of a bit like, if you think of an ASOS, the equivalent of ASOS in Australia, Southeast Asia, South America, etc. So I worked there for a few years, and um, we went through some interesting strategic changes while I was there. Lots of M&A, lots of fundraising, so stuff that was quite fun as a corporate lawyer to get my teeth into. But I
Mhm.
started working on Crafty Counsel on the side of that job, and actually I had been hoping that there'd be this great moment where Crafty had just caught fire, so it was really obvious I should go and do something else. And it was really obvious I should go and do that full time. Obviously, it never happened. But instead, what happened is I got quite far down the track of starting a different job. So when I'd been at Global Fashion Group at the scale up,
To go to another role somewhere else, or to stay at
yeah,
Global Fashion Group.
to go somewhere else.
Right.
So basically, I hit a fork in the road. I'd been looking for a while for a job that ultimately I was offered, which was first in-house lawyer at a venture capital fund. And the reason I wanted to do that was because my job at Global Fashion Group was to a large part to face off to our shareholders. So they would be these VC funds who were invested in our company, and their lawyers would negotiate with us, negotiate with me, and kind of tell us what to do. And I thought their job looked really good. So I quite wanted to be one of them instead of one of me. And so I found a job like that, and it was really good. It was the first in-house lawyer at a quite substantial UK venture capital fund. So the choice was whether to go and do that or whether to do Crafty full time. And that was quite a difficult decision because I thought that if I did that job, I'd sort of been doing more and more Crafty on the side, and I'd made it work in my existing role. But I thought I don't want to carry this into my new thing. It will just stay like a permanent side hustle and be distracting for the new job and probably never go anywhere. So I thought
Do you
it's
think?
really
Do you think the
decision time.
VC would have been? Would they have been less tolerant? Do you think to a side hustle,
They
or
actually said, "Oh,
maybe
you could come and you could kind of do this, like maybe you can host events in our office."
are they like recruiters'
Um,
promises though? Are they like that's what they say to get you through the door? Or
I think what it made me realize that I needed to choose because if I was going to do the new job, I wanted to do that really well.
yeah,
And equally, if I was going to have crafty, I didn't want to do it as a hobby, and I wanted to like either really give it a go. So I sort of thought, well, I'll never get another opportunity just to try. And the way I tried to frame the risk was I wrote my CV um, on the basis of crafty failing. So what would my CV say after a year or two if I'd spent a year or two trying to build this business and it didn't work? And I kind of rationalized it as saying, well, I could probably go back to the sort of job that I was now passing up on the basis that being a lawyer in a fund that invests in startups probably not a bad thing to have had some experience of doing that yourself. And probably like in that scenario would be like, whatever you do, do not do the following things. I did that. They don't work. So now that's why I'm a lawyer. I'm back being a lawyer, not a founder.
I
Um,
hear it, and I kind of feel like you've kind of almost moneyballed an MBA through your career. Like you've done the finance element of it, the kind of the various different bits, the marketing and sales element, whatever as it were. And I mean, it sounds like an ongoing kind of education piece. Like you're
a little bit. Yeah, I still think about that a bit today. I mean, obviously, we're now quite a while into Crafty Council, but I do sort of think of it a bit like that. Yeah, if you went and did an MBA, I think probably there's an argument to starting a business as a good alternative to an MBA because you do all the things ish, you learn them along the way, and you also get a shot at building a big business. So you sort of get a bit of both. And um, I think Crafty we're now at a point where it's a thing and it has a life that exists beyond me and has our whole team. Um, but there may well be a day when I do something else, and I think this experience will certainly um, will be a different set of choices after Crafty to the set of choices either when I was leaving Blue Chance or when I was in house.
I was going to say, isn't it nice to have it validated, that idea of not having it treated as a hobby, because you've gone all in on it. And I think everyone who's been would say that they can see the results of that as well. I mean, it's not, Ben, I'm not a great believer in multitasking. I think you're just doing one thing properly and getting on with it, right? And when I've been, I feel like it's a whole world gets open when you go through the door that day to the event, as it were. And I've not been into all the communities. Clearly, I'm the last person they want involved in all those communities. But when I've gone in and experienced it, I just think you are walking into a different world, and people are find it. It's like Narnia for lawyers. If
Mm.
there's a whole world out there, that they didn't know was available. Is it everything you hoped it would be? Is it, you know, is it, are you proud of it?
I'm really proud of it. Uh,
Right.
I think the thing that I have enjoyed most about the journey is it's quite creative. So when I was at university, I was a bit of a theatre kid. So I the thing that I did outside of studying or socializing or whatever. So like my main hobby was doing amateur theatre. So and the thing that I like to do is I like directing. I wasn't a very good actor, but I quite like telling other people what to do. And that's how I met my wife. So we had a sort of student production company. She was the producer and I was the director. And many years later, that's how we got together. So and I never pursued that after university and I always slightly regretted it. And this is sort of I really like being able to sort of bring back a bit more creativity in my day-to-day life than maybe I felt when I was in practice. And there's this really humbling sense of there's this thing out there in the world which didn't exist before and now it exists. I mean, you know that you've created your own business. There's something about there's an identity in the world that now it's a small dent that we've made. So there's a brand, people associate emotions towards it. For Crafty, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people have attended Crafty events. Crafty Fest is the biggest in-house lawyer event in Europe. That feels like a thing. And now we've got all these people who are in our team, and their livelihoods depend on Crafty. So I feel really proud about that and this sense of being able to have an idea and then assemble people and human capital and financial capital and being able to just put that out there in the world and create something that people like that makes them feel better. It's great. It's a great feeling.
I'm so glad that you said that, but especially the last bit, because I think that the idea about the theatre that I love about what you're saying is that the theatre people, theatre folk, are trying to create an experience and a feeling amongst people. But you'd have to agree with me, but my sense of people who've tried and failed at this before, in what you've done well, is that they haven't quite created a community in the true sense of it being a community. And I think that Crafty for me is definitely that. It feels like a community, like people will help each other, and as you just said, they would do that nowadays, whether you were there or not, to some extent. Do you know what I mean? Like it's lives and breathes a bit on its own. What's the
Yeah,
difference there? Why is that? Why has that happened? Do you think? Why has it got that magic?
I think it's not just us. So I think that if you look, I think especially in the UK, if you look at the legal ecosystem now, there are now a bunch of sort of overlapping communities and networks, not only around in-house, but sort of particularly around maybe different flavors of in-house. We're one. We're probably the single biggest in-house community in the UK, but there are a bunch of others who are all doing really inspiring, interesting things, either around job functions, interest groups, female GCs, for example. There's a lot of really interesting work happening out there. So I think there are lots of flavors, and I think that we've all realized that you know, there is slash was this unmet desire for human connection outside of the day-to-day job. Scrolling back to when I started Crafty, back then I remember working as an in-house lawyer, and I really felt that there really wasn't anything, nothing that worked for me. So you had your sort of almost trade association type model which existed. So the Association Corporate Council, for example, which is great organization, but there were bits of how they were doing things that I thought um, I couldn't see, like our GC, for example, signing up for our team to do that. Um, and then there were a few different groups, but they were organized on seniority. So you'd have like clubs just for GCs or chief legal officers, or very nichey on sectors, or both. So I remember applying to one. So I applied and I got turned down by an in-house lawyer network. And justly, because the entrance criteria were you had to be a GC. And I wasn't. I was corporate counsel. So my direct boss was a GC. And there was this network which was aimed at in-house lawyers in tech scale-ups, which is what we were. And I thought it would be really useful as a team if we had access to what other teams were thinking about. And I'm sure that there were others who were going through similar things to us.
Oh yeah.
But we were sort of blocked off from it because our GC I don't think was particularly interested in that particular group. I can't remember if we even discussed it. Um, and I wasn't senior enough. And I remember feeling that was a bit of a miss, that as a team, we needed to connect with the rest of the ecosystem, but we didn't have a way. Like everything that was built was just a slightly different shape of the. We were sort of round peg, square hole, or whatever. Um, and similarly, that even the law firms, I had seen that when I'd move in house, all these law firms would be inviting me to seminars and things as marketing. And that happened a bit, but I was actually surprised by how inefficient that process was. So unless you work for a big company that's already on a law firm's radar, um, we didn't seem to get invited to much stuff. And I remember having to proactively go and sort of knock on doors and say, we were a very, very substantially funded company that was working towards IPO, but our brand wasn't that well known, and so we sort of slipped through the cracks. The firms that we worked with didn't do much sort of organizing networking or anything for their clients, and the other firms didn't know we existed. So, long way of saying, I think there was a gap. The way we try and position Crafty is not that we're the people who know about stuff, but we're the people who know about stuff. So, so we try and lean in our comms and in the way we think about the community. We try and think about how do we add value for those people, and that it's about those people. And if you see us on LinkedIn, for example, not often are we talking about ourselves. Sometimes, but not often. And so, like when I'm on LinkedIn, I try and make an effort to talk about what's happening out there, what we're seeing, as opposed to what I've been up to today. Not always, but sometimes I catch myself and think, that was not very crafty. That maybe I've posted something that felt a little bit like the lens was towards us rather than shining outside. We try and shine outside, and I think that resonates. So trying to I think that overall that comes through that we're trying to build for this community and to be a great connector and figure out their needs and help them to connect that rather than it being sort of about us, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm just reminded of a phrase that somebody taught me once. But it was on a podcast actually where Rich Dibbins said to me, "Well, it's called show and tell side. It's okay to do loads of showing, right? Like you can always be that part of the community, but every now and then you do have to tell people this is what we do, right? This is what we do and how we do it. And this is how you sign up, right? This is how you get involved. And I love what you do, but I do think there's a place for balance in there as well about a little bit of self, but maybe in the right ratio as you say as well. I love that. What's the loveliest piece of feedback you've had on Crafty? What's the thing that you think, oh, I'm going to frame that?
Well, let me share some positive, but also some constructive feedback. So, because we read all the feedback, so we've had tons of lovely feedback. We've had a lot of people who've um, career changes have come directly through Crafty. So people who found jobs through the community, or who've um, I'm thinking one person, for example, who her whole trajectory changed to a great degree because of Crafty Fest. That someone she heard speak, someone that sparked an introduction. She met those people at the event and now works for that organization. There are a lot of stories sort of like that. So hearing those is really, really super. And that's when you just think that we've sparked something and that we're making this positive impact out there in the world. The constructive feedback I'd love to share because we do read it all. It's from Crafty Fest 2 years ago. So it's actually 1, 2, 3 Crafty Fest ago. So 2023. And it was the second time we'd done the event. And somebody wrote afterwards, it feels a little neurotypical. And there were some other explanatory comments there. I completely understood what that person meant. because I remember feeling at that event so overwhelmed. I had so many conversations and so much was going on, and I was so stressed that actually, for about 20 minutes, I just hid in the back of the theatre at the venue in the dark on my own, not talking to anyone, in the middle of the event. And I read that feedback afterwards, and I thought, ah, right, it wasn't just me, and there were a couple of other people who said the same thing. And I think what we realised was that even just in year two, we'd fallen into a trap of kind of big enough that it could feel a bit overwhelming. And at that event, I think we probably had about 400 people at Crafty Fest in 2023. By way of comparison, this year, Crafty Fest 2025, we had about 850. So it was more than twice the size. But I think the feeling was completely different. And what we learned, because we've sort of been learning as we're going as event organizers, um, that there's a lot in intentional design and like the geography of an event, sort of where people go, where the things are, um, what type of activities you have, and the mix of those things. So today, as we try and get a bit bigger every year, we talk a lot about two things. One is the small event in the big event, um, and the or getting smaller as we get bigger. And another way of putting it is stadium buzz, dinner party feel.
Yeah.
And that's about, can you build something that is really exciting? Got loads of people there, but the thing you're experiencing at that moment feels special just for you and not overwhelming. And then can you mix it up a bit so that, to this person's point, instead of feeling that you arrive at 9 and you leave at 6 and you've been on all day, can you have a day where you've got full on networking, catching up with friends, coffee, drinks, whatever, for part of the day, but part of the day you're listening to a talk, part of it maybe a talk with headphones. So that's partly why we brought those silent disco headphones in, which have been a feature for the last few years.
I mean, it allows you, I think, to have that mental pause, to focus, I mean, I enjoyed the TLD session this time round and what they did. And I think, I'm sure the other sessions were great, but what I didn't need was to have, it's like having a teenager, Ben, here, who plays their music downstairs, and I have to try and focus on what I'm doing upstairs, you know what I mean? And you can't do both those things at the same time. So I love what you did with that. I think it's quite clever. Are you, I mean, I have to say, I've come to the partners day and I felt a lot of pressure coming to it. Like, I felt like what you've built is so special. I, as a speaker, and you guys have been brilliant about, supporting people who come along as well. But I always felt like it was a real gift to be able to speak to that group of people as well. And I've been really nervous coming into that room and thinking, don't screw this up, right? Because there are a lot of good people in the room as well. So, there's something special you've created there. I think it's such a force for good. Those kind of conversations that take place as well. But I do get why people might feel as though there's some pressure on attending the day or that as well. And I think you've done a very good job of balancing that, for others when they attend, as it were, as well. Yeah, but I want to say thank you because I've enjoyed it when I've come along to speak to those groups. But
Thank you. So you've spoken at our last two partners days, and for those who might be listening, don't know what that is. Well, I mean, so Crafty is an in-house lawyer community. Probably probably covered that, but we have a lot of partners or sponsors of conferences of our different events, and we have other sorts of partners, but those are most. That's the majority. And so we've been running an event for the last few years where we flip the lens and we invite all those partners to a small conference. So it's for them. So it's all the law firms, the legal tech companies, recruiters, alternative legal services. They all mix together. They meet a few in-house lawyers who offer some perspectives on what they're looking for as clients. And we bring some inspirational speakers. And Si, you've been kind enough to do that for the last 2 years. Si, interesting comment. Is there more, do you think, we can do to make you feel at ease when you're coming as a speaker to Crafty?
no, it wasn't. The observation was more about. Thank you. That's a good question, and it's so typical of you guys as well. It's hugely welcoming. It's really warm. Everybody wants you to do really well. But I guess what I'm saying is that I feel, no, when you've got a group that you put in front of them, there's a privilege that comes to it as well. I think James Kwame, who's at Stevenson Harwood, was saying to me a few weeks ago, there was a group that he was put in front of, and he just knew, like, this is the room that I'm supposed to be in. Do you know what I mean? And it felt like that, like a bit like that. Like, it goes with it. You take it seriously. You guys have done really well at supporting people in that scenario. But I want you to know as well that there's something about, graduating to the Premier League. You want to play a better game. You want to do better as a result of it, as it were, as well. So yeah, I think anyone who's looked to get involved in partnering with you, I think we'd almost be wise to, attend that thing if they're invited, or to get involved in that kind of partner element as well, because we all have to up our game, like to earn the right to speak to 850 general counsel, right? That's the point, isn't it? You've got their ears for the day. I felt though there were really moving moments in this year's kind of event as well. That there were, you can hear a pin drop in the keynote at the front end of the day. Um, do you think about that in terms of the balance of the day as well, in terms of how it works at Crafty Fest?
Yeah, we do. It's quite tricky. So it's been a bit of trial and error. We found, so 2 years ago, we had Lee Castleton speak at
Mm.
Crafty Fest. He sort of closed the event out. I interviewed him in front of everybody in the round at the end of the event. And because of the Regent's University is a brilliant venue, but has its quirks as well. And you sort of have to work with the venue. It's so wonderful being there. Um, but it's a university and it's laid out in the way that it is. One of the things is there's no space we can really get there's no stage that accommodates everybody. So we improvised this thing with Lee at Crafty Fest 2024, where we put up a makeshift stage in sort of on the outskirts of the marquee, and then found deck chairs and people sitting on the floor and things like that, so that we were in the round. And we were then we that worked, but it was quite improvised. It really worked that year. And hearing Lee talk about his terrible experiences at the hands of the post office, I think everybody will remember that who was there. So then we reran that format this year of having Jordan Breslow, retired GC from the States. You heard that talk, Si. Having him in that slot. One of the questions from our team in the run up to this year's Crafty Fest was, what do we do with that slot? Because there was a concern that the Lee performance was, I mean, people were crying. Um, had we set ourselves up for a problem that everybody would be compared to Lee Castleton? And my decision was actually we needed to own that. That was a good problem to have. Um, it would be a mistake to back away from it. So let's make this a feature now of Crafty Fest. We end in this way, and then we have to pick a really special speaker. What we did this year was also to mix it up. So rather than having, so we had Jordan ending us, but we also had Zelda Perkins in the morning. Um, were you there for Zelda? I'm not sure, Sire.
I was there for Zelda. I wasn't there for the later one, and I obviously didn't go to League because that was prior to the visit. But what I was going to say to you was, what's interesting is that when people feel touch, moved, and inspired, they tell me about those experiences away from Crafty Fest. So I've heard from other people about how they felt about it. Now, Lee, people talk about it still to this day. He moved me. I was in tears. I didn't expect to go to a general council conference and feel that way. But what I heard this time was, this is the guy who had to make some brave decisions around how to behave ethically, and I can see myself in the decisions he had to make. So I felt as though, although Lee had done an incredible job and everybody knows that that's the case, but actually the subject matter was close to home this time, maybe a little bit,
Mm.
in terms of them as individuals as in the role. And it seems to have resonated just as much with people as well. It was incredible. Um, but isn't that lovely to know that your brand is like walking around and being spoken about that way afterwards? His brand and yours. That people are reporting those stories back to me say you should have come to this thing and you've missed it.
It's really lovely. Um, it's a challenge though. Then thinking about next year, then what do you change? What stays the same?
Welcome
Yeah,
to marketing, right? This is our life right now. So, and you're not going to get too much sympathy from me as well. Or do they say the reward for hard work is more hard work, Ben, right? So,
yeah, that's fair.
tell me a bit about the expansion to Europe and how that's going. Is it gone well?
Yeah, so we've got our Amsterdam event coming up in October. So that's Crafty Fest Europe. It's sort of a mini autumnal spin on Crafty Fest. So we'll be at a pretty cool venue this year, the Heineken Experience in the middle of Amsterdam. So it's what used to be the Heineken Brewery. It's now been turned into an event space. So yeah, it's exciting. We did the first European event last year. This is number two now. Um, it's interesting. We've got a super speaker lineup this year. In-house lawyers from Unilever, Rio Tinto, Mastercard, but also scale ups like Elastic, Mollie. And we've got Sophie McKibben, who is with PopHouse, which is they're the people behind the ABBA experience, founded by Bjorn from ABBA. So I so she runs legal in the London team there. So we great speaker lineup. One thing we're finding is just like it's taking something like this to a new market. You do have to invest the time in getting people getting to know you and what it is. Even though we've had actually a lot of people come over from the Netherlands and other parts of Europe to Crafty Fest in London, um, there's still, a lot of just getting the brand out there, explaining what it is, showing up. So we have some volunteers in Amsterdam who run a semi-regular local meetup. So we have this concept actually all around the world, but there's a particularly strong group in Amsterdam. It's called Crafty Locals. So they all got together for some drinks recently, and one of our team went over to join them and went really well. But the report that we got back from our colleague who was there was, even though everyone's here at the drinks, people do not know this brand in the same way that they do in the UK. So that's important and humbling to remember that we have to. You start somewhere new, you've got to do the hard yards, and you've got to really invest to make it work.
You're running, a market leader and a startup at the same time. That's just the nature of those two elements, as it were. Do you know what I mean? If you think
Yeah.
about it in that way, whatever the Boston Consulting Group matrix would be, one is a, superstar or whatever it is, and the other one is in a different phase, as it were. I mean, that's really interesting. We've got the same challenge coming up, I think, this year with the linked influencers, which I think has taken people's imagination a bit, and
Hmm.
we're going to go and try stateside with it,
Really?
and take it
Okay.
there. That's fraught with peril, right? We've got a litigious, massive legal community who are going to want to get it right first time, and the reward is huge, right? But equally, apart from Matt Schwartz and a few other people, DLA, they just don't know who we are. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of take it that way as well.
Mm.
You've obviously met a lot of people through the ecosystem in legal, been in private practice, you've been in house, you've now do what you do, you've seen suppliers. If you could swap roles for a day with somebody else or a different, maybe a job title, it doesn't have to be an individual. Um, who do you swap with and why?
Uh, I think I think there might be an opportunity running. So I originally thought I'd say one of the AI companies, but I think I'll give it a different answer. So uh, I think it'd be quite an interesting time to be running a really focused boutique law firm.
Mm.
So solving a particular type of client problem where you've got an opportunity to build really, really strong relationships and also stand apart from the crowd in terms of what it is and who you do it for. Um, we're obviously both super fans of Florence and all the team at Bellevue Law. I sort of think of that sort of organization where um, I where you can take a particular practice area or type of client and people immediately have a name association with you. In the scale up startup ecosystem, you might think of Founders Law, Avery Law, Ignition, maybe people like that. So I think that's an interesting moment, and I wonder how the whole AI thing is going to play out for these firms because it it sounds simple when you say it from the outside. I think it must be very, very hard. But from the outside, I wonder if there's an opportunity to use AI to really scale some of these firms and to offer some quite interesting pricing, so more fixed fee outcomes based models, and to scale with AI in a way that I think some of the massive law firms, there's more legacy to work through and complicated incentives to work through. So I think that could be quite interesting. Someone called me up the other day and said, "What do you think about an AI like the idea of an starting an AI powered law firm in the UK?" Um, and I think a couple of these are starting to bubble up more in the States, but at least one has now started in the UK. I think there is an opportunity for that sort of thing. You've got loads of these AI companies now starting, co-pilots for legal, Flank, Wordsmith, tons and tons of these sorts of companies. But I think there's a whole category of stuff where clients want a human and want a human to be able to help them and exercise judgment. And that I think there's an opportunity to have that combination of human plus AI. I think that could be quite fun.
I did a big piece when I first started the business on the evolution of the music business as a kind of metaphor for how we should think about like legal changing as well. And I think, that Napster moment, like Napster won. It may have lost, but it won. Do you know what I mean? It changed music forever. But it didn't mean that we didn't go and see live music or need musicians or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's just a changed world in which we live now, as it were. And we've democratized access to those things. I think you're right. It's incredibly interesting times ahead, but what they're not going to be is the same in 5 years' time. So, yeah, maybe a day at the helm wouldn't be enough for you, Ben, to go and do everything you needed to do at one of these boutiques.
I keep coming up with. I've got a note on my phone of like business ideas post crafty. I mean, most of which are complete nonsense, but uh, yeah, it would be nice one day to explore some of these things.
Just back to things back to the beginning, right? And maybe this is the final question for you because I've taken up loads of your time. But if private practice in general could learn one thing from the in-house community, like what was it you'd love to say? Hey, private practice, please could you listen to this lesson or try this differently? Or is there something there? Is there something that generically they could adopt?
I think easy to say, much less hard to do, but I think on average, in-house lawyers have a little bit more focus on impact rather than input. So, and that's, I think, to do with a bunch of things around how good reasons around risk and how these businesses are organized. But I think good in-house lawyers are often really, really close to how does the legal work drive the business forward. And sometimes on the law firm side, may just take and I think if you just look at it as a spectrum, where law firms often come out on average is a bit more around, is the advice correct? Is this how you normally do it? Almost, it's not only just getting the law right, but sort of the internal logic around um, this is how this sort of thing works. And the language that goes with it, the process that goes with it. Often the in-house lawyer, what their job is almost to take that and translate it into, okay, that legal work product, how does that fit in our business and help us to achieve our goals? And I think you often hear from in-house lawyers that the the private practice counterparts that they love working with are the ones who are helping to understanding what that impact is and then helping to make that jump.
And is there something there on the in-house side about maybe improving the briefing or improving the scope of the work or investing more in that side of things that would allow people to understand not what the input is that's required, but actually the outcome that's sought and how that advice kind of impacts that as well?
100%. And you often hear that from um, private practice, and quite rightly, often around this conversation around billing, for example. So you'll have some in-house lawyers saying, "Oh, why can't I just wish we could get more predictability on these bills, and why is it always still hourly rates, yada yada." And on the private practice side, you've got people saying, "Okay, but if you could scope this better and in a more predictable way so that our assumptions were not blown out of the window within 24 hours of us starting work, that suddenly we discovered there are more jurisdictions, more entities, it's going to take 3 months longer than you told us, then we can talk about outcome-based billing. But until then, we don't have enough context to do anything other than charge by the hour. So yeah, everyone needs to contribute to solving these problems.
I don't think it's too dissimilar to creative agency in lots of ways as well, right? We both need to be invested in that briefing process in order to get the outcomes that we're seeking on both sides, as it were, as well, common shared outcomes. But the question is quite often who's paying for that piece of work to be done. And I think that's, I do wonder whether we're going to see clients gravitate to weightier kind of relationships again, fewer firms, maybe the boutiques you were talking about earlier, Florence's place and some of the others that you named as well on the panel as well. So you've got a range of options. But I wonder whether there's only so many of those relationships you can maintain at any given time as a GC as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that makes so there's a quid pro quo there. Look, you'll invest in the scoping, but we'll get the outcomes that we seek as well. And you know that you've got some spend coming your way. Interesting times, Ben. Interesting times for all of us as well. Anything you want to tell us? Anything new on the horizon that we need to know about? Anything you'd like the audience to do as a result of having listened today?
So if you're listening to this as we sort of start the autumn back to work type season, um, if you're in and around continental Europe or fancy a trip to Amsterdam, the 2nd of October, do come and join us for our continental European spin on Crafty Fest Europe. Later in the year, we've got Crafty Week. So we're doing 3 conferences in a week: FinTech Day, Disputes Day, and Legal Tech Buyers Club. So Legal Tech Buyers Club is our basically trying to help in-house lawyers get their arms around the legal tech universe. So doing a small focus exhibition, not a conference, so meaning 1 or 2 talks, but mainly it's about coming and playing with technology and meeting some of these vendors. And the market's changing really fast, so we think that's a useful addition to the portfolio. There's something that's really targeted on that for in-house. So that's what's coming down the pipe. And next year we are looking at the US as well. So I think it's watch this space on that, and we're trying to see, is there an opportunity to take what we do and add to the ecosystem in the States. And we don't just want to duplicate, but we're looking at, is there something that we can add there that would help people's lives? So watch this space on that.
Well, all of that sounds incredibly exciting. Thanks as always for your time. And listen, if you're in the audience and you haven't already followed Ben on LinkedIn, then as you heard earlier on, he rarely talks about himself and he normally talks about others and their successes. So please go and give him a follow because he's well worth it. If you don't know what Crafty is, then that's okay, right? But do go and check it out because I'd love you to see what's there. I thought it was amazing when I first came across it, and I've advocated for lots of different clients to have conversations with Ben. Some people even closer to home than that, Ben. Right? So I advocate on behalf of Crafty all the time. I'm not on a retainer. I just think when I see a good idea and it works well, it's nice to make sure that all the people that you're fondest of get to hear about it as well. And so I'll always be an advocate for what you're doing as well. Good luck to you, and thanks again for your time today.
So much, so really thanks for the opportunity and great to see you.